Best defense Aaron Rodgers has ever had. I will say this. Yeah. And this gives Aaron Rodgers a really good opportunity. If he can get into the Super Bowl, I think there's a very good chance the Packers win the Super Bowl this year. And my favorites of winning the whole thing before the season started, I had Tennessee, Green Bay winning the Super Bowl. But Tennessee losing Derrick Henry, they're not going anywhere. And A.J. Brown, his injury, he hasn't been the same player this year because of injury. They are going to get into the playoffs. They could be the predominant number one seed. They really could. That's not saying much because they don't have any running game, and I don't trust their running game to take them where they need to be. So it's going to be crazy. It really is.
So I want to ask about your Steelers because Big Ben making an announcement this is probably going to be my last year with the Steelers. Whether that means retiring or not, that's another question. But what do you think is the best approach for them? Because this quarterback draft, like you were saying earlier, isn't really the flashiest one. There are a couple good names that maybe could be developmental guys. Obviously, Kenny Pickett would be the local product for the Steelers if you want to take a pick guy right away. Is that the move that the Steelers make? Do they maybe trade for maybe they gamble on maybe next year's equivalent of a Carson Wentz or something like that, and wait till the following year? What do you think is the best approach for them?
I'll say what I think is the best approach is probably not what they will do. I do think that they need to blow it up. I do think that they overachieved last year. I think the worst thing that probably happened to them long-term was to win those 11 games in a row because it made them look a lot better to management than they were. Kevin Colbert, the GM, is probably going to retire with Ben. I think that's been the goal, to kind of push for the Super Bowl. And next year they have a lot of cap space when they've been pressing up against it. So I would blow it up. I would let a lot of these older guys go. I would retool the back end of the defense and try to keep this offensive line, keep building that. You have weapons. I don't think depth-wise they're close enough, and that's been the problem. Guys getting hurt. A practice squad nose tackle from the Saints started for them last week. That's not going to cut it, right? And they just don't have depth because they spent all the money on starters. What I think will happen is the second thing that you said. I think they're going to go after a veteran quarterback. I think they're going to go after a Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. What can they give up? They're not shy about giving up draft picks to try to kind of piece this together while they still have TJ Watt and they still have the weapons. I don't know if that's going to work. Probably not, but I think that is probably going to be their first look. They have probably been the second most interested team in the incoming rookie quarterbacks. Kevin Colbert has seen 4 of them in person, and which is second only to George Patton of the Broncos. So I do think that they are looking, and that could be a possibility. But I think they're going to get a little greedy and go for a veteran.
So since we're going to bring up the quarterback carousel, there's a lot of names that are being tinkered with. Cam Newton will not be a Panther next year. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to be a Panther next year.
Yeah, he will.
Deshaun Watson will not be a Texan next year. Jimmy Garoppolo is I think he's out in San Francisco. Russell Wilson's basically telling people, I'm out in Seattle. Enjoy me now while I'm still here because I will not be here opening weekend next year.
That's not what he said.
Well, people are coming out saying that he's already agreed to the Broncos, the Saints, the Giants, and maybe the Eagles. So unless you know something they don't know, well.
I don't know what people are saying that because there's a lot of rumors saying that he'd be staying in Seattle. And teams are going to have to give 4 first-round draft picks for us. It's not just going to be given away.
I understand it's not going to be given
away.
So
the Giants are not the Giants are not. I'm just telling you, the Giants aren't an organization to give up the draft picks.
I didn't.
And the Saints,
the Giants at all.
The Saints are not willing to give up 4 first-round draft picks for him, or 3 first-round draft picks. So it's really narrowed down to 2 teams if you really want to look at it. But go ahead.
As my host brilliantly eloquated just now, there's going to be a lot of teams on the market. There's going to be a lot of movement, I think, this offseason with quarterbacks. Then you got the veteran guys like Kirk Cousins, like Aaron Rodgers that are going to be kind of finding their way for a new home because I think Rodgers is once out of Green Bay too. Do you see a lot of movement in quarterbacks this year, or is it going to be, again, a lot of stagnant quarterbacks and then rookies just taking spots?
I think we're going to see some movement. I think it's tough when you have guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers still under contract. It gets tougher. Like if they are free agents, awesome, but it gets a lot harder to trade for those players. Even Rodgers, even if he's like, I want out, I'm out, like we're seeing in obviously a very different situation with Deshaun Watson, but the Texans, held firm to a price that they didn't get and probably screwed that up. But, Watson could be playing somewhere right now instead. So I think we might not see quite as much movement as we may expect, but that does mean that those teams still need quarterbacks. Right. So I think we could see some of these backups that maybe we've kind of cast off as busts, guys like Marcus Mariota, Mitch Trubisky, getting jobs, and
Josh Rosen.
Well, maybe not quite Josh Rosen, but
I felt so bad for that kid. I love Josh Rosen.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He was like I missed heavily on Josh Rosen. I really liked him coming out of school, but but I think we could see some of these cast-offs maybe get short-term jobs, and someone drafts a rookie. Even though there isn't that elite quarterback prospect, I think you're going to have 5 or 6 that teams could view as potential starters with development, kind of in that Drew Lock, mold, where maybe we don't start him immediately, but if we can sign Marcus Mariota for a year and bring this guy along slowly, I think we see a lot of that happening.
I think when you look at this offseason, everybody talks about these great quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, you were saying, that could be available. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, and then Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. There's a ton of these guys that could be available. And I believe cold-heartedly, because they're under contract, to give these star quarterbacks away, you're going to have to give up a lot. And I don't see any of these teams giving up their future, extended future. Like I said, the Giants. The Giants are not an organization that's willing to give up a significant amount of first-round draft picks when pretty much Gettleman gave away. Gettleman
won't be here.
No, I understand that, but Gettleman is the one who gave them the opportunity to get 2 top 10 first-round draft picks. They're not going to just give it away for a guy that is not just the missing piece that's going to help you win a championship. The Giants have holes to fill, and it's not just Russell Wilson, and then they're going to win a Super Bowl. They could win the division. The division is so weak. So, in the offseason, my last question for you is, you're looking at the draft, and you pretty much have the draft covered. We talked about Hutchinson's. We talked about all these different superstar players that are going to be coming out of the draft. Is there a particular player that really sticks out to you in this year's draft that can change an organization, could change a franchise for the better?
I think that's always what teams are looking for. I think when we look at the quarterback position, I'm just not sure that player is there. Probably the most exciting guy that's going to be a late first or early second round pick is Malik Willis out of Liberty, who's gotten a lot of hype, but also had some pretty bad games against bad competition this season. And so when you have a guy that's 6'1", 215 that has that Cam Newton mold of being able to run guys over on the defense, like that, if he hits, that could change a franchise, right? When we see when we see a Lamar Jackson hit, it completely changes around that. And so I think Malik Willis is probably the quarterback that I'm going to be looking for the most. Like, where's he going to go? Is it going to be a Sean Payton who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room and can turn this mold of lump of clay like he did Taysom Hill? Like, you can turn Malik Willis into that, plus turn him into a superstar, or a team's going to kind of stay away and say, this is just way too risky. I'll take my Kenny Pickett and my Sam Howell and get my old school quarterback and I know what to do with. So I think Willis could be that franchise changer if he hits. And if he gets drafted too high, then a franchise changer in the other way when you draft him too high and he just busts.
So my last question is actually going to be from one of our fans, Jeff, who has a very good question. Lots of quarterbacks in the transfer portal right now. So any predictions on Max Johnson, Quinn Ewers, Adrian Martinez, and Errol's boy, Spencer Rattler?
Yeah, so I think Spencer Rattler is going to end up at Nebraska. He's taking a visit there. Mark Whipple, the Pitt offensive coordinator, going to Nebraska, which I think is a huge get. And I think you could even see him transfer with some of his receivers, Theo Weiss, Jaden Hazelwood's going to Arkansas. I think Theo Weiss is one that had a good connection with him. So that's my prediction for Rattler. Maybe that can turn him around. Could be an interesting system. Quinn Ewers, I think he'll go to Texas. I really want him to go to Texas Tech. I think it would be a lot of fun, with Zach Woodley, the offensive coordinator coming from Western Kentucky. I think would be fun. But I do think he ends up in Texas, where he was looking at to go originally anyway, and ends up starting there over, what little they have. Max Johnson, we don't have much to go off of now. I'm going to guess South Carolina. They're a team that likes to bring in transfers. He has a little bit of connection to that staff. And probably wherever he goes, too, his 4-star brother is a tight end who decommitted from LSU. So could be a team, kind of getting a 2-for-1 there to end up with him ultimately. And Adrian Martinez, I don't think it matters. I feel like he's been in college football for 50 years and he's never been good. So, I'll say let's put him on like Colorado State or something, somewhere really crappy. It would be nice.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been saying a lot about how you like the guy late, you like this guy early. What's the best pick? Or in the 5th and 6th round, and you were like, I really like this guy, and when he hits, and what was the pick you had going in the top 10, and you're like, this guy's a not miss, can't miss, and then ultimately he was a bust?
Oh, so, I swear I have the proof to back it up. I have an article I wrote a year before he actually went undrafted. That's James Robinson, the running back for Jacksonville. I compared him to David Johnson right before his senior season. I thought he was an excellent prospect. I was floored when he didn't get drafted. And then going to Jacksonville was a good opportunity. Obviously, Urban Meyer has not been very kind to James Robinson so far. So, I'm hoping either he gets out of there or finds his way.
Trevor Lawrence just stuck up for him today, by the way.
Yeah, which thankfully, and I thought that was, he's a guy that I was a really big fan of, and that one really worked out. And then, a top 10 guy that kind of busted out that I really liked. There's definitely been a couple. I mean, Josh Rosen's got to be up there as a player that I thought would be a good quarterback and just, I wasn't even sure if he'd be a stud, but I thought he'd at least be a good quarterback. Yeah. I mean, he couldn't even play for more than a season. Was pretty bad. So shame, yeah. That was one. Kevin White, if you remember him, went to Chicago from West Virginia. I liked his athletic ability, kind of taught me about some of those late breakout receivers. Don't always work out if they didn't do anything early in their college careers. So there's definitely a couple up there for me.
Last quick question. Devin Kirkwood. He's a friend of the show, good friend of ours. Where do you think he gets drafted in a couple of years? What kind of player do you think he is?
Yeah, so, at UCLA, I think that defense has kind of sprung up in a decent way. And I like his length. I think he has long arms. I think he's pretty good there. I have him, I'm pulling out my rankings, but I think I have him as a third-day pick at this point.
Wow, okay.
It's super early, but I think he's a draftable prospect with some upside. So, definitely interested to see where his career goes.
Devin, you heard that, bud? Shane Hallam has your third-round prospect. You need to get back on the field and keep pushing, buddy. We need to get you in the first round, bud. Shane, tell the fans how they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. You can also find at Draft Countdown. Go to draftcountdown.com for all of my work and can definitely point you in the right direction. Check out my podcast, Draft Countdown Podcast, wherever you get your podcast is NFL Draft-based, and the Devy Marketplace podcast for Devy Fantasy Football. So I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a really fun time.
Absolutely. We'd love to get you back on in the very near future. Maybe right after the playoffs, we'll talk about the draft and get ready. Actually, we have a draft. We have a draft show during the draft. Maybe we'll get you on the draft, unless you're going to be at the draft. Are you going to be at the draft?
I won't. We'll be live streaming on my end, but we can,
all right. So maybe we can
definitely pop on.
Yeah, maybe we can pop on for both of us and talk a little bit about what's going on in the draft. We really appreciate you joining us. We really do.
No, thanks, guys.